My mom texted, "You and your 5-year-old LD aren't coming to Thanksgiving. It's easier with no drama." My brother chimed in, "2 fewer plates to waste." I shot back, "You just voted out the one paying your mortgage." The text popped up, stark and unforgiving, "You and Leo won't be coming to Thanksgiving." My own mother, casually uninviting her grandson. But the real gut punch came moments later, and that's when I decided someone was about to lose everything. I was staring at quarterly reports in my midtown office, the fluorescent lights humming, but all I could see were Martha's words, glowing on my phone with a casual cruelty only family can deliver. "It's just easier without tension," she wrote. My presence, apparently, created tension. And just like that, my 5-year-old son, Leo, and I were out. The group chat immediately exploded with my brother Ethan's charming addition, "2 less plates to waste." I just stared at the screen for a solid 5 minutes, my coffee growing cold beside my keyboard. Leo, my sweet boy, was at preschool right then, probably making construction paper turkeys and practicing his gratitude speech. He'd been so excited about seeing Grandma Martha and Uncle Ethan for weeks. The rejection stung in ways I hadn't expected, cutting through years of carefully maintained boundaries and polite distance. Ethan had always been the golden child. Martha and Dad had paved his path with every advantage, from covering his college tuition to gifting him the down payment on his starter home. But when even that wasn't enough, when he'd leveraged himself into a mortgage he couldn't afford, they'd come to me with desperate eyes. Dad had passed 3 years prior from a sudden heart attack, leaving Martha on a fixed income that simply couldn't stretch to cover Ethan's financial disasters. I'd stepped in, because that's what you do for family, right? That $2,000 mortgage payment left my account automatically on the first of every month, an arrangement I'd maintained for the past 18 months. Ethan knew. Martha knew. Yet, it wasn't enough to secure us a seat at their holiday table. The tension Martha mentioned? That stemmed from my divorce finalizing 6 months earlier. My ex-wife, Chloe, had been universally adored by my family, even as our relationship imploded under the weight of her serial infidelity. When I filed for divorce after finding out about her third affair, Martha actually suggested marriage counseling and forgiveness. She'd invited Chloe to family dinners even after we separated, creating these incredibly awkward situations where I was expected to just play nice. My refusal to participate in that charade, apparently, made me the problem. Martha clearly preferred Chloe's charming lies to my uncomfortable truths. And Ethan, ever the opportunist, had immediately sided with Martha, always eager to align himself with whoever held the power. His wasted plates comment revealed exactly how disposable he considered Leo and me. I called my attorney, David Miller, first. We'd worked together through the nightmare of the divorce, and he'd become something of a friend. His voice, as always, was measured and calm. "David," I said, "no preamble needed. I need to understand the legal implications of stopping mortgage payments on a property I don't own." He didn't miss a beat. "Whose mortgage are we discussing?" "My brother's. I've been covering his payments for a year and a half. No formal loan agreement, no promissory note, just a verbal understanding and bank transfers." David made a thoughtful sound. "Those transfers create a paper trail, but no legal obligation to continue. You can stop any time without liability. I'd recommend documented notification that the arrangement is ending, though. What happens to him when the payments stop?" "His lender will initiate late payment procedures after 30 days, usually phone calls and notices. After 90 days of non-payment, foreclosure proceedings typically begin. The timeline varies, but he'd have several months before losing the property." I thanked David and ended the call, my decision solidifying with every passing second. Ethan's sneering comments still glowed on my screen. Then Leo's face flashed in my mind, excited to show Grandma his turkey crafts, utterly oblivious to how little his own grandmother seemed to value him. My response in the group chat was simple, direct: "You just voted out the person paying for your mortgage." 3 dots pulsed almost immediately as both Martha and Ethan scrambled to respond. I muted the conversation and opened my banking app. The automatic payment scheduled for December 1st was easy to cancel. 3 clicks. Done. My phone started ringing within minutes. Martha's contact photo filled the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Ethan called next, then Martha again. The messages started pouring in, a sudden, comical reversal of tone. Martha, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding about Thanksgiving. Ethan, come on, man, I was just joking around. Don't be so sensitive. Martha, your brother didn't mean anything by his comment. You know how he is. Ethan, we definitely want you and Leo there. Martha's being weird about Chloe, but that's her issue. The backpedaling was immediate, shameless. I watched the messages accumulate without responding. Something shifted in my chest. Years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who solved problems and wrote checks, all while being treated as less important than Ethan's ego or Martha's comfortable delusions. I picked up Leo from preschool that afternoon with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. He bounced into the car, his turkey craft clutch tight, feathers made from traced handprints in various colors. His teacher had written things he was grateful for on each feather: Daddy, trucks, dinosaurs, ice cream, Grandma. That last one twisted something inside me. Leo loved my mother with the uncomplicated adoration of a 5-year-old. She sent him birthday cards with $20 and called him her sweet boy. The idea that she'd exclude him from Thanksgiving to avoid tension with my ex-wife revealed priorities that made my decision much easier. Daddy, can we practice my turkey song for Grandma? Leo asked from his car seat. Actually, buddy, I said, we need to talk about Thanksgiving plans. They might be changing a little bit. His face fell in that devastating way children's faces do when disappointment hits. We're not going to Grandma's? No. But we'll do something even better. Maybe we'll volunteer at a community center in Westlake, help people who don't have Thanksgiving dinners. Then we'll come home and make our own special meal. Just us guys. Leo processed this with the resilience of childhood. Can we still have pie? We'll have whatever kind of pie you want. Calls from Martha and Ethan continued throughout the evening. I responded to none. Instead, I spent the evening researching volunteer opportunities and making a grocery list for our private celebration. Leo helped me plan a menu that included all his favorites, including 3 different kinds of pie because, well, why not? On Wednesday, I sent a formal email to both Martha and Ethan. David had helped me draft it during a lunch meeting, ensuring the language was clear and legally sound. This email serves as formal notification that the financial arrangement regarding the mortgage payment for the property at Ethan's address will conclude effective immediately. The final payment was issued on November 1st. No further payments will be made. This decision is final and not subject to negotiation or reconsideration. All future inquiries regarding this matter should be directed to my attorney, David Miller, whose contact information is below. I included David's office number and email, then hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response was nuclear. Martha called 17 times in the first hour. Ethan's messages evolved from apologetic to angry to desperate in 30 minutes. He called me selfish, vindictive, petty, cruel. He claimed I was destroying his family over a joke. He said Dad would be ashamed of me. That last one almost broke my resolve. Almost. Then I remembered Dad's funeral, where Ethan had been too busy networking with distant relatives to help with any actual arrangements. I had coordinated everything while Ethan worked the room like a social event. Martha had praised his ability to keep everyone's spirits up while I signed paperwork and made decisions about caskets and burial plots. Chloe called Thursday morning, which surprised me. We'd barely spoken since the divorce, except for custody arrangements made through lawyers. Your mother is having a breakdown, she said without greeting. She called me crying about Thanksgiving and something about Ethan's house. This doesn't concern you anymore. She said you're refusing to help your family over some petty argument. That doesn't sound like you. The presumption in her voice, the idea that she still knew me or had any right to comment on my decisions, sparked something cold in my chest. You don't know me at all. You never did. That's why we're divorced. I'm just saying family is important. Whatever happened, maybe you should reconsider. Ethan sounds really stressed. Tell me, did Martha invite you to Thanksgiving dinner? The pause told me everything. She mentioned it. Yes. While simultaneously uninviting me and your son. Did that seem appropriate to you? Another, longer pause. I didn't know Leo wasn't invited. Now you do. Enjoy your holiday. I hung up before she could respond, blocking her number immediately. The audacity of my mother inviting my ex-wife while excluding my child was a betrayal that somehow hurt worse than the original disinvitation. Thanksgiving morning arrived with an unexpected peace. Leo and I volunteered at a community center in Westlake, serving meals to folks who had nowhere else to go. My son took his job seriously, carefully placing rolls on each tray with intense concentration. An elderly woman told him he was a good helper, and his smile could have powered the entire city. We returned home mid-afternoon to prepare our own feast. I bought a small turkey breast that cooked in a couple of hours, along with all the traditional sides. Leo helped mashed potatoes, his entire face scrunched with effort as he worked the masher. We made cranberry sauce from scratch, watched the parade on television, and built a fort in the living room where we ate our meal picnic style. My phone sat silenced on the kitchen counter, accumulating messages I had no intention of reading. This small bubble of contentment with my son felt more valuable than any strained family gathering could have provided. Friday morning brought the first crack in Martha's armor. Instead of calling, she showed up at my house unannounced at 8 a.m. Leo was still asleep, giving us privacy for a conversation I'd been avoiding. She looked older than I remembered, stress aging her features into deeper lines. We need to talk about this situation. There's nothing to discuss. I told you my decision is final. You can't just abandon your brother like this. He's family. He clearly didn't think Leo and I were family when you made that comment about wasted plates. You didn't think we were family when you uninvited us to avoid tension with my ex-wife. You even invited her to replace us at the table. Martha's face flushed. That's not fair. The situation with Chloe is complicated. It's actually very simple. She cheated repeatedly. I divorced her. And you chose to maintain a relationship with her at the expense of your relationship with me. Then you invited her to Thanksgiving while excluding your grandson. Nothing complicated about those facts. Ethan didn't mean what he said. He jokes around too much sometimes. Martha, I've spent 18 months paying his mortgage. That's $36,000 of my money keeping his house out of foreclosure. When you uninvited me and Leo, you made it clear where we rank in the family hierarchy. I'm simply adjusting my financial priorities to match that reality. She tried different approaches over the next hour. Guilt about Dad's memory, appeals to family loyalty, promises that things would be different. She even cried, which was unusual for her. None of it moved me. I'd spent years being the reliable one, the solution to everyone's problems, and it had earned me exactly nothing in terms of respect or consideration. If you don't resume those payments, Ethan will lose his house, she finally said, the threat implicit. Then Ethan will lose his house. He's a grown man with a job. He can figure out his own finances. How can you be so cold? I learned from watching how you treated Leo and me. Apparently, family loyalty is conditional, so I'm simply applying the same standard you established. She left without another word, her face tight with anger. I felt no satisfaction, just a weary sadness that things had deteriorated to this point. Ethan's financial situation became apparent over the next few weeks through mutual acquaintances. He'd leveraged himself into a mortgage based on projected commissions that hadn't materialized consistently. Without my monthly payments, he had no cushion. His lenders started calling by mid-December. He tried everything to get me to reconsider, offered to apologize publicly, to make amends, to do whatever I wanted. His desperation was palpable but unconvincing. These weren't genuine changes of heart, they were panic responses to consequences. I ran into Chloe at Leo's preschool winter concert. She'd maintained her custody rights despite the infidelity, something I hadn't contested because Leo deserved a relationship with his mother, regardless of her failures as a wife. She approached me after the program with unusual hesitancy. "I talked to your mother," she said quietly. "She told me what's happening with Ethan's house." "Then you're more informed than you need to be." "She also told me why you're doing this, about Thanksgiving and what she said." I told her she was wrong. For what it's worth, I told her that excluding Leo was unacceptable and that if she'd done that to me, I'd have reacted the same way. The admission surprised me enough that I looked at her directly. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I messed up our marriage in every possible way." "But you were always good to Leo. You're being a good father now, too. Teaching him that people have to face consequences for their choices. Your mother won't see it that way, but I do." She walked away before I could formulate a response, leaving me in the preschool hallway, processing this unexpected validation from the least likely source. Christmas approached with my family situation remaining fractured. Martha sent a card to Leo, but nothing to me. Ethan's messages became increasingly hostile, blaming me for his impending foreclosure, as if I'd somehow forced him into a mortgage he couldn't afford. Work became my refuge. My position as a senior financial analyst at Sterling Group had always demanded focus, but now I threw myself into projects with renewed intensity. My colleague, Mark, noticed. "You're taking on every assignment that crosses your desk," he observed over coffee. "Everything okay?" I considered deflecting but found myself explaining the situation. Mark listened without interruption. When I finished, he leaned back. "That's rough, man. But honestly, you did the right thing. My sister went through something similar. Our parents expected her to bankroll our brother's restaurant dreams while treating her like an ATM. She finally cut them off. Best decision she ever made. The solidarity helped more than I'd anticipated. I'd been operating in isolation, second-guessing my choices despite knowing they were necessary. Hearing someone else validate the decision provided perspective I hadn't realized I needed. Leo's preschool held its holiday program that same week. He'd been practicing a song about reindeer for weeks, his enthusiasm infectious. I sat in the tiny chairs, watching him perform with absolute confidence. His voice carried over the other kids, slightly off-key, but filled with joy. Afterward, several parents made small talk about vacation plans. One father, Daniel, mentioned his family's annual gathering with dread. "My in-laws host every year, and it's always a production," he said with a strained laugh. 3 days of passive-aggressive comments and unsolicited parenting advice. Can't wait. I found myself grateful for my current arrangement. The absence of obligation to attend stressful family gatherings was liberating. Leo and I could create our own traditions without navigating complex family politics. The week before Christmas, Ethan's wife, Sarah, called my cell directly. Her number showed an unfamiliar area code, suggesting she was using a different phone to avoid screening. I answered out of curiosity. "I'm calling to tell you that you've ruined Christmas for our children," she said without preamble. "They don't understand why we can't afford presents this year." The accusation was designed to provoke guilt, but I felt only cold clarity. "Your financial situation isn't my responsibility, Sarah." Ethan knew the terms of our arrangement, and he chose to ignore boundaries that had consequences. "You're heartless. These are children we're talking about. My child is also involved in this situation. He was excluded from Thanksgiving because his presence was inconvenient. Where was your concern for him then?" She had no response. The silence stretched. Finally, she spoke again, less hostility, more desperation. We're going to lose the house. Ethan's commission structure changed, and without your payments, we can't make up the difference. We'll be out by March. I'm sorry that's happening, but it doesn't change anything. You both made choices that led to this outcome. You could stop this tomorrow. One phone call to your bank and everything goes back to normal. Normal was me subsidizing a lifestyle you couldn't afford while being treated as disposable. That's not something I'm interested in returning to. Sarah ended the call abruptly. The conversation had reinforced my decision. Their entire approach was transactional, focused on what I could provide, not on genuine relationship or mutual respect. I took Leo shopping for Christmas decorations that afternoon, letting him pick out ornaments and lights with complete autonomy. He chose an inflatable snowman for the front yard that was slightly garish but made him laugh every time he saw it. We spent the evening decorating our house, playing holiday music, and making hot chocolate with excessive marshmallows. My phone buzzed with a message from Martha around 9 that night. Ethan told me Sarah called you. I wish you would reconsider helping them through this difficult time. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, I've made my position clear. Please stop asking me to reconsider. She replied immediately, this isn't the son I raised. Your father would be disappointed. That stung more than Sarah's earlier comments. Invoking Dad's memory as a weapon felt particularly cruel. I called Martha directly, anger sharpening my voice. Dad would be disappointed that you excluded his grandson from Thanksgiving to avoid tension with my ex-wife. He'd be disappointed that Ethan made a cruel comment about wasted plates and faced no consequences from you. He'd be disappointed that you're prioritizing Ethan's poor financial planning over my right to be treated with basic respect. Don't tell me what your father would think, Martha shot back. I knew him for 42 years and I was his son for 35 years. I learned my values from him, including the importance of standing up for yourself and not letting people take advantage of your kindness. That's exactly what I'm doing. This is about more than one comment at Thanksgiving. She was right, though probably not in the way she meant. This was about years of being the responsible sibling, the reliable one who solved problems and provided stability, all while being taken for granted. The Thanksgiving exclusion had simply been the catalyst that made the underlying dynamic impossible to ignore. You're right, I said quietly. This is about a pattern of behavior that showed me where I stand in this family. I'm simply adjusting my actions to match that reality. Martha was crying when she ended the call, her sobs audible even as she hung up. I felt terrible, but not guilty. There's a difference between causing someone pain and allowing them to experience the consequences of their own actions. I took Leo to visit my late father's brother, Uncle Arthur, for Christmas instead. Arthur had always been the black sheep of the family, a philosophy professor who'd never married and lived in a cluttered house full of books. He welcomed us warmly, genuinely delighted to see Leo. Your mother called me, Arthur said while Leo played with a collection of antique toys Arthur kept for visiting children. She wanted me to talk sense into you. And will you? I told her she raised you to have principles and integrity, and she should be proud that you're standing by them even when it's difficult. She didn't appreciate that perspective. We spent Christmas Day reading stories, playing board games, and eating a meal that Arthur admitted he'd never attempted before. The turkey was slightly dry and the gravy lumpy, but Leo declared it the best Christmas ever, and I found myself agreeing. New Year's Eve arrived with surprising peace. Leo and I watched the countdown on television, banging pots and pans at midnight in our living room. He fell asleep on the couch shortly after, his face peaceful in the glow of the television. I carried him to bed, tucking him in with the stuffed dinosaur he'd gotten for Christmas. My resolution for the new year was simple: prioritize the people who valued us and stop explaining myself to those who didn't. The clarity that came with that decision felt like shedding weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. January brought freezing temperatures and a return to normal routines. Leo started back at preschool with stories about his Christmas adventures with Uncle Arthur. The other kids were fascinated by his description of Arthur's antique toy collection. I received a letter from Ethan's mortgage company in mid-January, a form notice indicating they'd been attempting to contact the borrower regarding past due payments. The letter had been sent to my address by mistake, likely because my bank information was on file. I forwarded it to Ethan's address without comment. My work performance actually improved during this period. Without the emotional drain of managing family dysfunction, I had more mental energy for strategic projects. My boss, Eleanor, called me into her office in late January to discuss a promotion opportunity. "We're expanding the senior analyst team," she explained. "The position comes with a substantial salary increase and more client-facing responsibilities. I think you'd be perfect for it." The timing felt serendipitous. The money I'd been sending to Ethan would now translate into career advancement and better financial security for Leo. I accepted the position enthusiastically, feeling like pieces were falling into place. Mark took me out for celebratory drinks after work, insisting on toasting my promotion properly. Over whiskey at a local pub, he shared his own family estrangement story in more detail. "My sister didn't talk to our parents for 3 years," he said. "Everyone thought she was being stubborn and prideful. Turns out she was just protecting herself from people who only valued her for her paycheck. They eventually came around, but it took them hitting rock bottom first." "Did the relationship recover?" I asked. "It's different now. More honest, actually. They can't pretend she's just being difficult when they literally drove her away. The whole dynamic shifted once they had to face reality. I wondered if something similar might happen with my family. The thought didn't bring hope so much as resignation. If reconciliation required them hitting rock bottom, then that process would unfold on its own timeline. The foreclosure notices continued arriving through winter and into spring. Ethan received formal warnings in January, default notices in February, and legal paperwork in March, announcing the initiation of foreclosure proceedings. He tried one last desperate appeal in April, showing up at my workspace with documentation of his financial situation, as if seeing the numbers would change my mind. "I'll lose everything," he said, his voice cracking with genuine fear. "My house, my credit, everything. You'll lose a house you couldn't afford without someone else paying for it. That's not everything. That's a consequence. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. There's nothing you can offer that I want, Ethan. You showed me exactly what you think of my son and me. That comment about wasted plates wasn't a joke. It was how you really feel. I'm simply acknowledging that reality and acting accordingly." He left my workspace in tears, and I felt nothing but tired. This whole situation was exhausting in ways that went beyond the immediate conflict. The February weather brought unexpected snowstorms that shut down the city for 3 days. Leo and I built a snowman in our front yard. Our neighbors, an elderly couple named George and Helen, came out to admire our creation. "Haven't seen a snowman that good in years," George said with genuine appreciation. "You two make a good team." Helen invited us in for hot cocoa, and we spent an hour in their warm kitchen hearing stories about their own children and grandchildren. They'd been married for 53 years, weathering difficulties that made my family drama seem small by comparison. Their son had died in a car incident 20 years ago, yet they'd maintained relationships with his friends and kept his memory alive. "Family isn't always blood," Helen said at one point, though I hadn't mentioned my situation. "It's the people who show up when things get hard and stay even when it's uncomfortable." The wisdom in her words stayed with me long after we'd returned home. Leo fell asleep early, exhausted from hours of playing in the snow. I sat in the quiet house thinking about chosen family versus biological family, about the relationships we maintain out of love versus those we maintain out of obligation. Valentine's Day arrived with Leo's preschool party. He made cards for his classmates, and an extra one for me, covered in heart stickers and his careful printing, "To Daddy, you are the best." The simple declaration filled me with emotion I hadn't expected. This kid, this perfect little human, was thriving despite the family fracture. He didn't seem damaged by the absence of extended family drama. If anything, he seemed happier, more secure in our smaller, more stable world. Chloe picked him up that evening for her scheduled custody time. She'd been consistently reliable for months now, a change from the chaos of our marriage. As Leo gathered his overnight bag, she lingered at the door. "Your mother called me again," she said quietly. "She wanted me to convince you to help Ethan." "What did you tell her?" "I told her to stop putting me in the middle of your family issues. I also told her that she created the situation by choosing me over you and Leo, and she needed to own that." The statement surprised me enough that I studied her face for signs of manipulation. She met my gaze steadily. "I know I don't have any right to opinions about your family," she continued. "But for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Leo is happy. You seem more at peace than you did during our entire marriage, and you're teaching him an important lesson about self-respect." After they left, I sat with her words for a long time. The validation from my ex-wife felt strange, but meaningful. She'd been the catalyst for much of this family drama, yet she could see the situation more clearly than my own mother could. Martha made one final attempt in February, arranging an ambush meeting by claiming she needed help with paperwork. I walked into her living room to find Ethan, his wife Sarah, and their 2 kids waiting with her. "We're here to settle this as a family," Martha announced with forced cheerfulness. "There's nothing to settle. I've made my position clear." Sarah spoke up, her voice sharp with resentment. "You're punishing our children because of an argument between adults. How is that fair?" "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm declining to continue paying your mortgage." "Those aren't the same thing." "You know we can't afford it without your help," Ethan interjected. "Then you should have considered that before deciding my son and I were too much trouble to include in a holiday meal. Actions have consequences. This is yours." Martha tried her guilt routine again. Ethan's kids looked confused, too young to understand. Sarah glared at me. The whole scene felt like a performance designed to manipulate rather than reconcile. I left after 15 minutes, ignoring Martha's calls to come back and talk reasonably. There was nothing reasonable about expecting me to subsidize people who'd made it clear I was disposable. The foreclosure sale happened in March. Ethan and Sarah moved into a small apartment, downsizing significantly. The family grapevine buzzed with opinions, most of it critical. I was painted as vindictive, cruel, unforgiving. Uncle Arthur called after hearing the gossip. "They're saying you destroyed your brother's life over a text message. They can say whatever helps them sleep at night. The truth is available to anyone willing to see it. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Painful, but right. Your father would have understood, even if he wouldn't have admitted it publicly." That validation meant more than I expected. Dad had always been conflict-averse, preferring peace over justice, but he'd also raised me to stand up for myself. In his own way, he'd prepared me for this. My cousin Brooke reached out through social media, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her message was long and detailed, explaining she'd heard Martha's version but wanted my side. I appreciated the gesture enough to call her. "Martha's version makes you sound like a monster," Brooke said bluntly. "But I remember how things were growing up. Ethan always got away with everything while you were expected to be perfect." We talked for over an hour, catching up on years of missed connection. Brooke had her own complicated relationship with family expectations. "The thing about setting boundaries," she said, "is that the people who respected you all along will understand, and the people who didn't will prove you were right to establish them in the first place." Her perspective crystallized something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. The negative reactions weren't proof I'd done something wrong, they were confirmation that my assessment of the relationship dynamic had been accurate. March brought Leo's first experience with soccer, a recreational league for preschoolers that was more chaos than actual sport. I stood on the sidelines with other parents, watching tiny humans chase a ball. Leo scored on his own team's goal during the second game, celebrating with such genuine enthusiasm that everyone laughed. One of the fathers, Adam, struck up a conversation. His son and Leo had become friends, bonding over dinosaurs. Adam mentioned his own family situation casually: divorced, shared custody, navigating co-parenting. "My ex-wife's family still includes me in holidays," he said. "It's weird sometimes, but they made it clear that our divorce didn't change their relationship with me. I'm grateful for that." The contrast to my own situation was stark. Chloe's family had cut contact immediately after our separation. Martha had prioritized Chloe over her own son and grandson. The difference in family loyalty patterns was illuminating. Leo scored an actual goal during the fourth game, this time in the correct direction. His celebration included a running lap around the field with his arms spread like airplane wings. I cheered with embarrassing enthusiasm, not caring what the other parents thought. These small moments of joy with my son reinforced the rightness of my decisions. Every dollar I'd sent to Ethan had been a dollar not invested in experiences like this. Every ounce of emotional energy spent managing family dysfunction had been energy not available for being present with Leo. Uncle Arthur called during the last week of March with unexpected news. "I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer," he said with his characteristic directness. "Early stage, very treatable, but I wanted you to know." The diagnosis shook me more than I'd anticipated. Arthur had become our primary family connection. The thought of losing him felt unbearable. "What's the treatment plan?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Surgery scheduled for May, followed by monitoring. The doctors are optimistic. I'm planning to fight this with everything I have, especially now that I have a great nephew to spoil." We talked through his medical details and support needs. I offered to help with appointments, recovery care, whatever he needed. Arthur accepted with gratitude, noting that I was the only family member he'd told so far. "Will you tell my mother?" I asked. "Eventually. But I wanted to tell you first. You're the one who's actually been present in my life." The implication was clear. Arthur had observed the family dynamics and made his own assessments about who deserved his trust and vulnerability. April arrived with warming weather and Leo's 5th birthday approaching. I'd been planning an elaborate party with his preschool friends, a bounce house, and a dinosaur theme. The preparations kept me busy and distracted from the ongoing family silence. Martha sent a birthday card for Leo 2 weeks early, including a check for $100 and a note asking if she could attend his party. The request caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to maintain the boundary, to protect Leo from potential drama. Another part recognized that Leo missed his grandmother and deserved the chance to have her in his life. I called Martha that evening after Leo was asleep. "You can come to the party, but we need to establish some ground rules first." "I'll agree to anything," she said quickly. "No mentions of Ethan or the mortgage situation. No passive-aggressive comments. No bringing Chloe as a guest. If you violate any of these boundaries, you'll be asked to leave immediately." "I understand. Thank you for letting me come." The conversation was stilted but civil. I didn't trust her completely, but I was willing to give her a chance for Leo's sake. The party was about him, not adult conflicts. Leo's 5th birthday came in April with a party that included his friends, Uncle Arthur, and surprisingly, Chloe. She'd been making genuine efforts to be more present in Leo's life, showing up for events, following through on commitments. We weren't friends and never would be, but we'd achieved a functional co-parenting relationship based on mutual respect for our son's needs. Martha and Ethan weren't invited. Martha sent a card with money, but no request to attend or see Leo. The silence felt like acceptance of the new normal. Martha arrived exactly on time, carrying a large wrapped present and wearing an uncertain expression. Leo lit up when he saw her, running over for a hug that she returned with visible emotion. She kept her word throughout the party, engaging with Leo and his friends without any drama or boundary violations. As the party wound down, Martha helped clean up wrapping paper and deflate the bounce house. The domestic cooperation felt strange after months of conflict, but I appreciated her effort. "Thank you for inviting me," she said as she prepared to leave. "It means more than you know. Leo deserves to have his grandmother in his life. But Martha, this only works if you respect the boundaries I've established." "I know. I'm trying to understand your perspective better. It's hard, but I'm trying." The admission wasn't a full apology, but it represented progress. I walked her to her car, where she paused. "Ethan's rental application was denied for 2 places because of the foreclosure on his record," she said quietly. "Sarah's parents are letting them stay in their basement temporarily." I waited for the guilt trip or plea, but none came. She was simply sharing information, perhaps testing whether I'd show sympathy or regret. "I hope they find stable housing soon," I said neutrally. Martha nodded and drove away without pushing further. The restraint suggested she was slowly learning what boundaries looked like in practice. Arthur's surgery in May went smoothly. I took several days off work to help with his recovery, bringing Leo along for visits that brightened Arthur's spirits. Leo drew pictures of dinosaurs fighting cancer, his 6-year-old logic deciding that if dinosaurs were the strongest animals, they could defeat anything. Arthur kept the drawings taped to his recovery room wall, telling every nurse and doctor about his great-nephew's artwork. During one evening visit, while Leo played with blocks, Arthur brought up the family situation directly. "Your mother visited me yesterday," he said. "She wanted to know if I thought you'd ever forgive Ethan." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that forgiveness isn't the same as restoration of relationship. You can release anger without re-establishing the same dynamic that caused harm in the first place." How did she take that? About as well as expected. She wants everything to go back to how it was, which means she hasn't really understood what went wrong. Arthur's cancer diagnosis had given him a philosophical perspective on relationships and time. He spoke frequently about spending energy on connections that mattered rather than maintaining facades. "Life's too short for fake harmony," he said. "Real peace requires real honesty, and most families can't handle that level of truth." His words resonated deeply. The peace I'd found wasn't fake or temporary. It was real, built on honest boundaries and authentic relationships with people who valued me. I ran into Sarah at a local market in May. She looked tired, but not as hostile. We made awkward eye contact across the produce section. "How's Ethan doing?" I asked out of automatic politeness. "He's managing. New job with better base salary, less commission dependency. We're adjusting to the rental situation." I nodded, unsure what else to say. "Look, I don't expect you to care, but I need to say something," she continued. "I was angry at you for months. Blamed you for everything. But Ethan finally admitted that he'd been living beyond our means for years, counting on your payments to cover the gap. That wasn't fair to you or sustainable for us." The admission surprised me. "I appreciate you telling me that. Your mom still thinks you're wrong. Probably always will. But I get it now. You set a boundary and we ignored it, thinking you'd never follow through. That's on us, not you." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me with an unexpected sense of closure. Sarah's words didn't fix everything, but they acknowledged reality in a way the rest of my family hadn't been willing to do. Summer brought a new routine. Leo and I developed our own traditions, separate from extended family obligations. We took a road trip through national parks, camped under stars, and created memories that belonged only to us. Uncle Arthur joined us for a weekend in Grand Teton National Park, having recovered well from his surgery and eager to spend time. Martha reached out again in late summer with a birthday card for me. Inside, she'd written a short note, "I miss you and Leo. I hope you're both well." No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened, just a vague expression of missing us. I didn't respond immediately, sitting with the card for several days. Part of me wanted to maintain the wall I'd built. Another part recognized that Martha was aging, that time was finite, that grudges had costs. I called her on a Sunday afternoon when Leo was with Chloe. The conversation was stiff at first, both of us navigating unfamiliar territory. "I got your card," I said simply. I meant what I wrote. I do miss you both. Missing us isn't the same as understanding why things happened the way they did. She was quiet for a moment. I know I made mistakes. With Chloe, with Thanksgiving, with how I handled things with Ethan. I prioritized the wrong things. The admission was small but significant. Not a full apology, but an acknowledgement that hadn't existed before. "Leo asks about you sometimes," I said carefully. "He doesn't understand why we don't visit anymore. I'd like to see him. And you, if you're willing." We arranged a brief visit, just lunch at a cozy cafe. Martha was nervous, her hands fidgeting. Leo was cautious at first, but her genuine delight at seeing him warmed the atmosphere. She didn't mention Ethan or the mortgage. Neither did I. We talked about Leo's preschool, my work, her book club, safe topics that allowed connection without forcing resolution of deeper issues. The lunch wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Leo left happy, chattering about showing Grandma his new skills. Martha hugged me goodbye with tears in her eyes, whispering a simple thank you that carried more weight than longer explanations might have. Ethan and I remained estranged. He made no effort to reach out beyond the initial crisis, content to cast me as the villain in his story. I'd made peace with that narrative. People believe what they need to believe to make sense of their circumstances. Uncle Arthur observed during a phone call that I'd traded one family dynamic for a different one, choosing quality over quantity in relationships. He wasn't wrong. The people in my life now were there by mutual choice and respect rather than obligation alone. Leo started first grade with confidence and joy, untainted by the adult conflicts that had reshaped our family structure. He had friends, interests, and a security that came from knowing he was valued and prioritized. That outcome made every difficult decision worthwhile. The mortgage payment had stopped making freed up resources for other things, college savings for Leo, investments in his education and experiences, financial security for our small family unit. Money flowed toward people who valued us rather than those who'd taken us for granted. People asked sometimes if I regretted my decision, if I felt guilty about Ethan's foreclosure. The honest answer was no. I'd offered help freely when asked, and that help had been treated as worthless by the very people receiving it. Stopping wasn't punishment, it was a natural end to an unsustainable situation. Martha and I maintained cautious contact, building something new from the ruins of old expectations. She never quite apologized for Thanksgiving, but her changed behavior spoke louder than words. She showed up for Leo, respected boundaries, and stopped pressuring me about Ethan's situation. The whole experience taught me that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about mutual respect, reciprocal care, and acknowledgement of each other's value. When those elements disappear, the relationship becomes transactional at best, and toxic at worst. I'd chosen to end the transaction. In doing so, I'd discovered that the absence of toxic family was more peaceful than their presence had ever been. Leo thrived in our smaller, healthier circle. I slept better knowing I'd stood up for both of us rather than continuing to absorb disrespect for the sake of keeping peace. The story didn't have a fairy tale ending where everyone reconciled and learned profound lessons. Real life rarely works that way. Instead, it had an honest ending where boundaries were established, consequences were faced, and some relationships ended while others transformed. Leo still makes turkey crafts at school each November. Now we deliver them to Uncle Arthur and to the community center in Westlake where we volunteer every Thanksgiving. Martha gets one, too, mailed with a photo of Leo's bright smile. Ethan gets nothing, and that absence no longer causes me any internal conflict. We built a life that works for us, free from the obligation to maintain relationships with people who demonstrated we were expendable. Some might call that cold or unforgiving. I call it healthy boundaries and appropriate self-respect. The mortgage money still leaves my account on the first of each month, but now it goes into Leo's future rather than Ethan's present. That reallocation of resources symbolizes the broader shift in my priorities, choosing investment in people who value me rather than appeasement of those who don't. Years from now, Leo might ask why we don't see Uncle Ethan or why our extended family is small. I'll tell him the truth, in age-appropriate terms, that sometimes people show you who they are, and believing them is an act of wisdom rather than cynicism. That standing up for yourself and those you love is worth the cost of comfort or approval. He'll understand, I think, not immediately, but eventually. Because I'm raising him to know his worth, to establish boundaries, and to walk away from situations that diminish him. The best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. It's living well, choosing wisely, and refusing to accept less than you deserve from the people who claim to love you. Was standing my ground the only path forward?